Hello everybody, my name is Eric Mullins, and today we're going to be checking out Good Smile Company's Beatless Lacia. She's a 1/8 figure designed by an artist named Legz. Now, I have to mention that there are two versions of this figure, the older 2011 and this one's the 2018 model, but I'll talk more about all of this at the end of the video. And before going over everything on this figure, I actually have the box to her. It's extremely rare that I keep my boxes. I just don't have a lot of space where I live, and so them's the breaks. But I kept this one, and the reason being that this box is incredibly flipping solid. It is such a solid box, and this is actually full of tons of cosplay things. And the box itself is really beautiful. You get to see all the different pictures of this character. We have some nice silver reflective writing. It's massive and very solid, so it felt really well protected during the shipping. It's also resealable with this whole foldable thing going on here. I say cosplay, like I'm some sort of professional. Maybe Halloweeny-'s a bit more of an accurate term in this case. Her base is a little wonky looking down at the bottom. Just these strong angles really give off Legz's artistic vibes. You have to build this bottom part. It comes into 3 separate pieces that all plug into one another. And then you put in all these little black panels, which then these larger panels go into. The plastic feels very thin, extremely delicate, and it was stressful as heck plugging all these pieces into one another. Due to the fact that the base itself is roughly the same type of black that we see everywhere else, it does seem kind of monotonous. With the nicer highlights that we get within the implanted pieces, it still pops out well enough. Underneath this base, you can see all the different peg holes. It's really plastic into plastic into plastic. Really does not feel solid. Yet I've had her for several years, and I have banged her into a little thing here or there. Nothing's broken as of yet. It's extremely wobbly that it makes no sense, but really it's just the weapon piece that you see in the back. Her herself, she's actually in there really well. The piece holding this giant weaponry is really long and somewhat thin so that it hides a little bit when you're looking at her from the front, so I understand where the wobbliness comes from. These plates are all pretty much the exact same, maybe ever so slight variations in the highlights. I love how we get this gorgeous, silvery, metallic gray highlight going throughout it, where they then fill in black areas down near the bottom so that everything can really pop super well and they get you to look at what they want you to look at, despite the fact that this could have been very boring and plain looking. We have these lovely little silver pieces at the top. They look really nice. These plates themselves are relatively thin, but they have a nice shape to them, where even on the underside, they actually have some nice sculpture work and design going on, so it's not boring if you start looking at it from an underneath angle here or there. As for her weapon, my goodness, this thing looks really, really cool. Here we get some sectioning off of the blacks with some nice silver highlights, all sorts of metallic plating line work, and this gorgeous orb with a little bluish metallic piece on the inside, and it's on both sides. For real, the sculpt on this thing is very, very well done. And they didn't cheap out on the back end. It looks nice from almost every angle. As we're going up to the top of this railgun looking weapon, there are teeth on the inside and the outside. The outside one is done with a lighter gray here and there, some silver highlights, and there's sculpt work indented into the teeth themselves. It's absolutely incredible. Where when we look at the inside part of the railgun, we get such a beautiful paint job here of highlights and shading that make you think this thing is charging up with energy. As we look at the bottom with the gray blades, these things are great, and we actually have some shading on this as well. The amount of work put into this whole entire base plate is nothing short of miraculous. Good Smile Company did a fantastic job, and Legz should be happy and very proud. Despite the plastic feeling a little bit cheap and fragile, it's just so imposing and nice on any shelf. The piece holding Lacia up is pinned in with 2 chunks of plastic, like everything else in here, so it's not necessarily the most solid. Yet what's funny is that they have a metal peg going into her leg. Like, shouldn't that... what? So the metal peg is holding Lacia to the piece of plastic, and the piece of plastic is staying onto the base with 2 little pieces of plastic. Okay. But she's not that heavy, and she's posed in a way that, for real, I thought she'd be leaning after all these years, and lo and behold, she's fine. What's fun is that she comes with an extra base. This is a little round base. It's really not that big, doesn't take up too much space if you just want to show off the character, but her whole pose and disposition, I mean, she needs this base. regardless of that, I'm going to use this one for my photos so this way you can see her a little bit better. She plugs into the base roughly exactly the same way that she does into her constructed base. Nice metal peg going up her extremely thin ankles, but she still feels pretty solid. Her foot that goes into the plastic peg doesn't seem like it goes in 100%, maybe like 98%, but it's not bad enough that you're going to notice it that much on a shelf. Her shoes look terrific. It almost feels bio-organic, like these things could be bone, or they just look like really nice water shoes. They do not cheap out on the undersoles of these shoes either. We have all sorts of these epic designs, almost feels like they're malleable with these kind of scaled type design. And we have a lovely heel here, done using the same reflective metallic glossed out black that we get on other parts of her body. She's wearing thigh highs that clip in, and these have some nice blue metallic tones, along with some gray as well. We've got some beautiful line work here and there, indent in her foot, along with the circular one around her ankle. And up closer to the knee, we get into that sweet scaling robotic armored effect. She also has this effect along the back of her leg, with a gorgeous line going all the way down the center. Her skin bevels out ever so slightly from these thigh highs, which really gives off a more elegant, robotic, ballerina-styled vibe. Despite her design looking like she's quite the tall or long character, she looks so petite. Maybe it's the fact that she's a 1/8, and I'm not used to it because the norm is usually 1/7. Her legs are very well sculpted, nicely shaped. We get a bit of shading here and there as we get into her behind, where she's wearing this bathing suit piece, and despite skimping out on the material, they don't skimp out on the shading. We've got some nice highlights here. It was such a bad joke. Along the front, I love these little clips that we have that go into her waist. I find they just look cool, and as a design piece, it works well with the section off parts that are supposed to be floating around her. On the right one, we get some lovely company writing, while both are sporting that cute little design with a triangle at the top. They're a pearlized white, but they are shaded using a nice metallic blue. She seems to be wearing a bodysuit that has layered armor on top of it. The bodysuit does in fact have lighter blue highlights on it, while the armored parts continue with the traditional electric metallic blue. It's fun to see the line being small and thin near the stomach, and then it slowly opens up as it gets down near the bottom. I just think it looks cool, and it's something that an illustrator would do. The sectioned off armored pieces she has, they feel kind of like spider legs or something like that, where we get some lovely shading here, and they don't just go in with the metallic blue. Here we actually get some grays to really differentiate the materials, giving us a beautiful and vast separation of textures all over this figure. It's for somebody who absolutely adores textures all over their figures, these breaks in texture are so perfect. This plating does have some design work underneath as well, and they're all interconnected to one another. In the back, the spikes kind of come down with these lovely little hooks and a sweet little design that you could think is probably associated to the company that made her in the lore that she comes from, where it gets plugged into this piece that's directly in the center of her back. It's a lovely glossy black, almost looks like the gloss you'd find on her armored black base around her, and this thing is plugged into her lower spine. I gotta say that it's not particularly plugged in well. On certain angles, you see this thing, and I feel like that should have been designed to look maybe like a screw or something going into her back, but it's not, and so it's just a square chunk of plastic. And you can't push it in further. I feel like you'd just break something at that point if you tried. As for her back, I freaking love the sculpt that we get on this. We get this beautiful defining line for her spine, which then gets masked by the white pearlized armored plating. Her back has a really strong curve to it, which feels very unnatural and not necessarily human, and really does a great job at selling you on her roboticism. The white armored up pieces have some stretches and folds which help at accentuating the curve in her back, though they put it on her right side, which is the side that's stretching out while her left side is moving inwards. I feel like this should have been reversed, but that's really more of a nitpick. Going up into her shoulder blades, we get lovely skin here, though it does feel a little bit beveled with the arms and everything, and there's not as much definition as I would have liked, though it's hard to really knock on this when the figure itself is a robot. It does look kind of plasticky and synthetic, which I guess is what you kind of want from a half and half robotic looking android girl. Along the front, these armpit cutouts also look super robotic and synthetic, and despite her skin being matte and soft, it's a little shinier up around there. Her chest is rocking a lovely cutout window, where we get all sorts of mashups in texture here, from the white pearlized metallic blued armored overlay, to the black with blue highlighted glossed bodysuit, to the matte soft skin. The armor really does look like it's enveloping her body nicely. It actually looks like she's wearing this clothing, which is just fantastic. That is, of course, until we get to the neck. The black gloss in her bodysuit wraps around her neck. You could make the argument that it's done doing so tightly, and that's why maybe the plastic from her neck bevels out ever so slightly, but I'm just not a fan of this. I've never been. I'd rather it look like the neck is going into the costume, and if you want to make the costume part a little bit thicker, that's fine, go right ahead. It's just when it looks the other way around, where it looks like the head is actually just slotted into there, that's not so much for me. You get it with this figure, but ever so slightly. Not a lot, and from a shelf, it's not something I really notice that much. It's only when you look at it with a microscope. Her neck is also long and slender, which matches up nicely with her long, slender legs and her long, slender arms. Her shoulders look beautiful, delicate. They jute out fairly sharply along the ends, which is very cool. I think it works with her robot design. I'd say that the muscle definition on the arms isn't as nice as I personally would have liked to see, especially around the biceps. Her forearms are nicely done, and I love how on the inside of her elbows, we get that nice robotic scaling. As we get down into her wrists, they're fairly thin. On the outside, we have this lovely robotic design, and on the inside of her hand, there's actually these little open cutouts, which I just find very cool. The fingers themselves are relatively well done, but I'd say her thumb on her right hand looks a little bit too small, especially in comparison to the one on her left, which looks more natural. They seem to have given her a light pinkish looking metallic gloss for her fingernails, and it really works well because it's the same kind of gloss that we get on her lips. Her face is so pretty. It looks so soft, so smooth. It looks like a really good mashup between the anime and the initial illustration that Red Juice had made. It's very rounded out but pointy at the nose and the chin, which is just lovely classic anime. The lips have a lovely pearlized look to them, where we actually get to see a little bit of her teeth behind them. The eyes on this figure are absolutely phenomenal. So these eyes are done matte. I would have liked for maybe the eyeball part to be a little more reflective, but this drawn decal of the eyes looks so perfect, and they work so well with this whole figure. You'd think because of the fact that they're very soft and they don't use any actual blacks that it wouldn't pop out as much, but for real, there's a difference between this figure going for the softer look and a figure like Corrin from Fire Emblem trying to do it. Removing those darker tones can do all sorts of different things for the human emotions, and for real, in this case, it makes her look very beatless, like she's missing that soul in the first place. I also find them to be really cute. Her eyebrows are really thin, nicely done decals, and then we get into her little hair clips. She's got 2 of them. They're pretty well done. They look nice. And now I would say it's the most ambitious part of this figure, and that's saying a lot considering how ambitious this entire figure is to begin with. Her hair is flowing and swirling and going all over the place. This is nuts. If you squint and look at her hair, it looks so beautiful. It has such a lovely silhouette to it, with strands folding on top of strands and around other strands. It goes over her little hair clip, for crying out loud. We get multiple little hair strands coming out through the left side of her head. The whole thing is done with a lighter toned blue, and they put some gorgeous darker blue highlights all around it. And looking at this girl's hair from the back just makes you think, wow, that's so cool. All of this while squinting ever so slightly. And the reason I say this is because the second you start opening your eyes and paying attention and you start looking at this thing with a microscope, there are so many sectioned off plastics here for the hair. And near the bottom, obviously, that's fine, but when it comes up near the front of the face, around the side, they're just too noticeable. It looks so incredibly chunked in there, and it's definitely the weakest part of the figure. Even from a shelf, you're gonna notice this strand here that folds over top of her little hair clip, and it's done so poorly that I would almost say it's cool to see something like this, but you didn't execute it well, so maybe don't do it at all. She's a robot. I get that they wanted to go for that soft anime hairstyle that looked kind of like Red Juice's artwork, or I guess like the anime itself. I would have hard carved in all of the lines everywhere so that it doesn't feel like any of this is out of place because of how ambitious it was. Despite this though, the hair sculpt actually does look very beautiful. so it's kind of a shame that it didn't turn out as nice as it could have. Upon her release, she was going for 18,333 yen. What an odd number to choose. And if you opted for the version of her that didn't come with this epic base and was just her on her own, I believe it's about 7,000 cheaper. I personally don't think it's worth it whatsoever. Spend the 7,000 more, get this base? Are you kidding me? This base is worth that, especially in a day and age where we live with Azur Lane figures where they'll be like, oh, without the armor, 20,000 yen. With the armor, 40,000 yen. This is really worth it. Even if I said it was kind of thinner plastic and it felt a little bit cheap, you're not going to be picking her up or transforming her, do anything like that. It looks terrific, and on a shelf, it's not going to be wobbling like you see here. Not to mention her entire pose and flow goes with this. Having her reaching back and doing all of the things that she's doing here, without it, seems so out of place. It's kind of awkward. But if you really love Lacia and you can't afford this whole back base or you don't have the space for it, because let me tell you, this thing is so demanding space. And if you don't give her the space that she wants in a display cabinet, she's going to just attract and absorb dust. And this is not an easy figure to dust with the whole wobbling and fragile plastic. So Lacia demands that you take good care of her, the best possible care of her, and she'll take care of you. Working together with robots. That's the future. If you don't take care of them, they'll take care of you. There are actually two different versions of this figure. A 2011 version, which honestly, I remember when they came out with that, I was following Red Juice as an artist for quite a while, and I just didn't particularly like the way that the space sculpt was, and there's a bunch of other little things I wasn't particularly fond of. Her very artistic looking background wasn't really for me either. So it was really crazy when they announced this 2018 one. I just was so hyped and excited about her. However, boy oh boy did she go through production hell. I can't believe how hardcore it was. Even with the production model all colored in and everything, with the virus of unspecified origin just coming out of the gates, I really thought that they were going to axe this figure. But they came out with her anyway, and she looks pretty good. There's not a lot of paint blemishes anywhere that I can see that are noticeable on my copy at least, and despite a few of my gripes here and there with some of the things, overall this figure looks absolutely gorgeous, especially at that price point. Would I have liked her to be 1/7? Absolutely. Would I have had the place for it? I don't even have the place for this. You give and take, right? I actually tried to watch the TV series back in the day, and I couldn't even get through half of it. I just didn't like the pacing so much. I found that the writing and a lot of the characters just felt so one-dimensional, but I didn't finish it, so who knows? Maybe it ends with something grand and impressive. It just was less for me. I got this because I absolutely love the artist that created it, and I have this thing as being an artist myself, where I dream of the day that I can make an illustration to one of my characters from my manga Blithe, and that it will be made by a company as epic and competent as Good Smile, or Kotobukiya, or Alter. Oh, that would be amazing. Who knows, it might be in the cards for me. A lot can happen in 5 years. So I love to support and promote other artists that get it done. I can't do it for all of them, but whenever I can, I do. And especially for Red Juice, where back in 2011, him having an illustration that gets turned into a figure, it really wasn't as common back then as it is today. Now we see it everywhere, and that makes sense because there's so many amazing artists doing so many creative stuff. It's so cool, and if there's one thing that the anime community is just absolutely the best for, is the fact that they love to support new and creative ideas. I think it's the greatest, and I think it's amazing, and I think I love it like crazy. I love the anime community. What can I say? I grew up with it, and I love that they try so many new different stuff. So hopefully my video today helped you decide if you're still on the fence of getting her or not. If you like my video just a little bit, it doesn't cost much to robotically hit that like. While you're here, why not hit that subscribe? And as a robot, passionately break those chains and shake that notification bell. It goes a crazy long way at helping support the future of my channel. Every subscriber I get helps push towards me making my own figure in the future. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Beaten, less, beaten, less, beaten, less, beaten, less. Blue hair energy really is a thing.